So picture this. You are standing on the tee box. The sun is just beating down on you. Your heart is absolutely racing, and you're you're gripping your driver so tight, your knuckles are literally turning white.
Oh, yeah, the classic death grip.
Right. And why are you doing this? Because you just double bogeyed the previous hole after, chunking a wedge straight into a bunker.
It is brutal.
It really is. We have all been there. You're standing over the ball, and instead of visualizing a beautiful, smooth drive down the fairway, all you can think about is how you are actively ruining your scorecard. So welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are on a mission to completely decode the mental game of golf.
It truly is probably the most frustrating but also beautiful and just psychologically demanding game in the world. And that pain you described on the tee box, I mean, that is universal.
It's not just me, right?
Oh, definitely not. It doesn't just happen to casual weekend players. It happens to the absolute best players in the world.
Yeah.
The difference is entirely in how they handle that specific moment of crisis.
And that's exactly what we want to unpack today. We are pulling from a massive wealth of professional mental coaching manuals, modern sports psychology research, and the core principles of legendary sports psychologist Dr. Bob Rotella.
Brilliant stuff in those materials.
Yeah, really eye-opening. We want to figure out why our concentration just vanishes the second something goes wrong. And, more importantly, how to build the bulletproof mental resilience of a tour pro. Because honestly, the most baffling part of the game to me is how one single bad shot can derail an entire afternoon.
Yeah.
Like you hit one ball out of bounds, and suddenly it's like you've completely forgotten how to even hold a golf club.
Yeah, to understand why that happens, we really have to look at the anatomy of concentration loss. Golf is incredibly unique because it takes, 4 to 5 hours to play?
Wait, at least.
But the actual time you spend swinging the club is only about 3 or 4 minutes total for the entire round.
Wait, really? Only 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah, just a few minutes of actual execution. So staying intensely focused for an entire afternoon is biologically exhausting. Mental fatigue naturally sets in. But the bigger culprits behind losing your focus are what sports psychologists actually call time-traveling thoughts.
Time-traveling thoughts. Okay, so you mean like mentally lingering on that missed putt from 2 holes ago. Or maybe already worrying about the massive water hazard you have to face on the next hole.
Precisely. Your body is physically standing on the current tee box, but your brain is, anywhere but in the present moment. Add to that the incredibly high expectations we place on ourselves, the heavy burden of perfectionism, and just this intense fear of embarrassing results.
Oh, embarrassment is real when you hit a bad shot in front of a group.
Exactly. You put all that together and you have a perfect recipe for lost focus. But that specific phenomenon you described earlier, where one bad shot triggers an absolute meltdown that is clinically referred to as the bogey spiral.
The bogey spiral. Just hearing the phrase makes my heart rate spike a little bit. It's so visceral.
It is a totally vicious, self-fulfilling cycle. And here is the fundamental truth of the bogey spiral. A single mistake is almost never the actual problem.
Really?
Yeah. A bad swing is just a bad swing. It happens to literally everyone. The real damage to your scorecard comes entirely from your emotional reaction to that mistake.
So the slice into the trees isn't what ruins a round. It's the anger following the slice into the trees.
Without a doubt. Because when you get frustrated, your system gets flooded with stress hormones, things like cortisol and adrenaline. That emotional spike fundamentally alters your brain chemistry. It degrades your fine motor skills and leads to terrible decision-making.
Right. So instead of just taking your medicine and pitching the ball safely back onto the fairway.
Your stressed-out brain tells you to try and hit some miracle recovery shot through a tiny 6-inch gap in the trees.
Which never works.
Never. And that poor decision inevitably leads to another bad result, which then shatters whatever tiny bit of concentration you had left.
And then comes the absolute worst part, I think. The moment you enter that spiral, you inevitably try to fix your swing mid-round. You hit one fat iron and suddenly you're thinking, oh, my grip is too strong, or I'm dropping my right shoulder. And before you know it, you're just paralyzed by self-doubt.
That is the ultimate trap of the amateur golfer. You stop playing golf and you start playing golf swing.
Golf swing, I like that.
Yeah, it is physically impossible to mechanically rebuild your swing on the 7th fairway. Tour professionals understand this deeply. When they hit a terrible shot, they don't immediately assume their fundamental mechanics are broken. They assume it was just a lapse in focus or bad timing. Amateurs hit the panic button, and that mechanical panic just accelerates the spiral.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like dropping a glass in your kitchen, and instead of just grabbing a broom and sweeping it up. You get so mad that you kick the refrigerator and break your toe.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Right. The first mistake was just an accident. The second mistake was purely bad emotional management.
And that secondary emotional damage is what ultimately ruins the day. You've compounded the error. So to stop kicking the refrigerator, you have to first realize that your anger is bubbling up before it actually boils over. You need heightened self-awareness to identify the early warning signs before the bogey spiral fully takes hold.
Which is way easier said than done. Because usually I don't realize I'm in a spiral until I'm like writing down an 8 on my scorecard and questioning why I even play this sport. So what are these mental red flags we should actually be looking for?
Well, there is a very specific set of warning signs that indicate your concentration is starting to slip. Physical tension is a massive one. You'll find yourself white-knuckling the club, maybe locking your knees or hiking your shoulders up toward your ears.
Oh yeah, the shoulder hike.
Yeah. Another major red flag is an accelerated tempo. You start walking faster, talking faster, and swinging much faster. Your brain just wants to get the impending disaster over with.
Oh, the angry speed walk to the ball after a bad drive. I know that one intimately. Just head down, marching through the rough.
We've all been there. Other indicators include negative self-talk, muttering under your breath about how terrible your swing is, and of course, lingering anger over past shots. But the absolute biggest red flag, and the one that truly separates weekend amateurs from elite pros, is falling into the score versus process trap.
Okay, what does that trap actually look like in practice?
It looks like doing math on the golf course. It's when you stand on the tee box of the 15th hole and think, okay, if I par the next 3 holes and bogey the last, I can still break 90 today. You become entirely obsessed with the end result.
But wait, I have to push back on that a little bit. Isn't the entire point of golf to get the lowest score possible? Like, how can thinking about your score actually be a bad thing? But that is literally what determines who wins the tournament.
What's fascinating here is the paradox of high performance. Tour pros want a low score just as much, if not vastly more than you do. Their entire livelihood, their mortgage, depends on that score.
Right, the stakes are huge for them.
But they understand a fundamental truth. Obsessing over the final score actively distracts your brain from the physical execution of the immediate shot in front of you.
So wanting the result too badly prevents you from doing the things required to actually achieve the result.
Precisely. The elite mindset focuses entirely on the process. That means putting all your mental energy into the pre-shot routine. Picking a very specific target, feeling the wind on your face, and fully committing to the club in your hand. The score is merely a byproduct of executing that process over and over again.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when you start score thinking, you are future tripping. You are living in a hypothetical reality 3 holes from now, which means you are not in the present moment. And the present moment is literally the only place where you can actually make contact with the golf ball.
Wow, that is a massive perspective shift. But it makes me realize something. Recognizing these signs, knowing that my tempo is too fast, or catching myself doing scorecard math that's really only half the battle, what do you actually do when you realize you're spiraling? Like, let's say I just hit a horrific shank into the woods. What is the immediate next step?
Well, that brings us to how professionals actively view the game, which is a completely different paradigm than the amateur. They don't just hope to calm down. They have a trained protocol because they actually expect adversity.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The psychology research points out that professionals view golf as a game of mistakes, not a game of perfection. They actively train for acceptance. That just blows my mind. You watch them on TV and their swings look completely flawless, but internally, they are fully expecting to mess up.
It raises a really important question for the listener. Why do we expect perfection in an outdoor game played on unpredictable terrain with swirling wind, uneven lies, and just infinite variables? The greatest players in the world might only hit 3 or 4 truly perfect shots in a given round.
Really? Only 3 or 4?
Yeah. The entire rest of the day is just managing the misses. Once you accept that golf is inherently a game of mistakes, a bad shot is no longer a catastrophic failure. It's just a data point.
Managing the misses. Love that phrasing. So instead of throwing a tantrum when the inevitable miss happens, they rely on a system. And the coaching manuals outline an emergency mental rescue system called the Bogey Reset Routine. And apparently, it's designed to take a maximum of 30 to 60 seconds. How does this actually work in real time?
It is a highly structured, step-by-step routine designed to arrest the physiological panic and reset the brain. It starts with simply noticing what you're feeling. You don't try to suppress the anger because suppression doesn't work. You just acknowledge it. You say to yourself, I am incredibly angry that I just chunked that iron.
Right, so naming the emotion takes some of its power away. And then you have to move straight into acceptance.
You have to accept the unchangeable outcome. The ball is in the bunker. As we said before, no amount of anger will magically levitate the ball back onto the fairway. It happened.
Yeah, yelling at the sand won't help.
Exactly. Once you accept that reality, you move into the third and arguably most critical step, which is physical breathing, to stop the biological stress spike.
We'll definitely dig into the mechanics of that breathing in a moment.
Yeah.
But once the body starts to calm down, how do you fix the mind?
That's the fourth step, mental reframing. You actively shift the narrative in your head. Instead of thinking, I am completely throwing this round away, you reframe it to, well, this is a great opportunity to test the bunker skills I've been practicing. Or even simpler, you just say 2 words to yourself, next shot.
Next shot. Keep it simple.
From there, you refocus. You force your attention entirely onto your present environment. You look at the texture of the grass, you feel the breeze, you listen to the birds. You use your physical senses to snap your brain out of the past and into the right now.
And then finally, you commit. You don't hit the next ball until you are 100% committed to the decision, the club, and the target. If there is even a shadow of a doubt in your mind as you stand over the ball, you have to step away and start the physical pre-shot routine entirely over.
Exactly.
Wow.
And within that 30 to 60-second routine, there is a phenomenally important window. The first 10 seconds immediately following a terrible shot dictate the entire rest of your round.
Why is that specific 10-second window so crucial?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the neurobiology of stress.
Yeah.
You can't control the fact that the ball went in the water. A gust of wind might have caught it, or you might have slipped, but you have 100% control over your reaction in those next 10 seconds. That brief window is where your brain decides whether to trigger a full-blown fight or flight response or to remain calm and analytical. If you let destructive thoughts run wild in those 10 seconds, if you start slamming your club into the ground and cursing, your amygdala takes over, your heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods your system, and you are officially locked into the bogey spiral.
So you have to isolate the helpful thoughts and ruthlessly banish the destructive ones before the fuse is actually lit. But, I have to be honest here. When my heart is pounding and I am furious about a bad drive, trying to simply think happy thoughts and reframe the situation just feels impossible. It feels fake. How do we actually get the body to calm down enough to even attempt that mental reset?
You are touching on a fundamental law of human performance. You cannot outthink a nervous system that is in a state of panic.
That makes so much sense.
Psychology has to be supported by physiology. If your heart is beating out of your chest, your brain physically cannot access its higher-level executive functions. That is why the breathing component of the reset routine is absolutely non-negotiable.
Okay, let's really dig into the physiology then. We hear just take a deep breath all the time, but the techniques used by pros are much more clinical than that, aren't they?
Highly clinical. When you experience stress on the golf course, your breathing naturally becomes very shallow and rapid, living entirely up in your upper chest. This shallow breathing acts as an alarm bell, signaling to your primitive brain that you are in physical danger. To override that alarm, performance psychology highlights diaphragmatic breathing, which means breathing deeply into your belly, expanding your stomach rather than your chest.
The military uses these kinds of techniques too, right?
Yeah.
I've heard of box breathing in relation to Navy SEALs.
Box breathing is incredibly effective for golfers. It's a 4-part rhythm. You inhale deeply for a count of 4, hold the breath for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold empty for a count of 4.
Okay, so it's a literal box.
Yep. The brilliance of this technique is twofold. First, it physically lowers your heart rate. Second, it forces your racing mind to focus on the act of counting, which interrupts the obsessive thoughts about the bad shot you just hit.
There's another technique mentioned in modern research called the physiological sigh. What is the mechanism behind that one?
Oh, the physiological sigh is essentially a biological override switch for immediate stress relief. It consists of 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed immediately by a long, extended, and slow exhalation through the mouth. The mechanics of it are fascinating. That double inhale forcefully pops open the millions of tiny air sacs in your lungs called alveoli, which tend to collapse when you're stressed. Then, that long exhalation stimulates your vagus nerve.
And the vagus nerve is essentially like The brake pedal for your nervous system.
Exactly. Biologically speaking, whenever your exhale is longer than your inhale, your heart rate must slow down. It's not a placebo effect. It is hardwired into your anatomy. If you are standing in the deep rough, just fuming with anger, executing 2 or 3 physiological sighs will literally change your body chemistry within seconds. It clears the physiological noise so you can actually think clearly again.
That is unbelievably practical. I love knowing the actual mechanics of why a breath works. But here's the thing that really stands out when you look at how professionals train. All of this, the box breathing, the mental reframing, the specific routines, none of this is something you just magically invent on the course when you're under pressure. True mental toughness is built before you ever step foot on the first tee.
Mental resilience is a muscle. It
Yeah.
requires reps. Think about it this way. You wouldn't show up to a tournament expecting to flawlessly hit a 300-yard draw if you had never practiced that specific swing on the driving range.
Right, obviously not.
Yet amateur golfers constantly expect to have tour-level emotional control under pressure without spending a single minute practicing emotional control off the course.
So how do they practice it? The coaching materials detail specific off-course training systems, and they scale based on how committed you are. There's a 5-minute daily version for busy people, focusing just on basic visualization and diaphragmatic breathing, but it goes all the way up to a 30-minute daily routine for highly ambitious players. What does 30 minutes of mental golf practice actually look like?
Well, the 30-minute routine is where you see truly massive transformations in a player's handicap. It typically incorporates dedicated breathing exercises, but also detailed journaling. A golfer might journal about their specific mental triggers, like realizing they always rush their swing after a bad hole. It also involves intense positive self-talk exercises, and most interestingly, pressure simulation.
Pressure simulation. You mean like sitting in your living room and imagining you need to make a treacherous 5-foot downhill putt to win the Masters?
Yeah, exactly that. You close your eyes and vividly visualize the sensory details of a highly stressful situation. You imagine the silence of the crowd, the speed of the greens, the stakes of the putt. You do this until you actually feel physical anxiety arise in your body, your palms sweat, your heart rate increases, and then once you've triggered that stress response in your living room, you actively use your breathing techniques and reframing skills to calm yourself down. You are literally training your nervous system to recover on command.
Wow. You're basically vaccinating yourself against pressure. And the craziest part to me is that sports psychologists note that mental progress can be tracked just like your physical golf handicap. They have actual objective metrics for your mind.
They do, because a goal like getting mentally tougher is far too vague. To improve, you need measurable data.
The metrics they suggest are brilliant. For instance, rating your commitment before a shot on a scale of 1 to 5. Like, did you actually fully commit to the club and the target? Or did you swing with a little bit of doubt? You can track the speed of your recovery after a mistake. Or track the number of neutral reactions to bad shots, which is when you hit a terrible drive, and instead of yelling, you just watch the ball, shrug, put the club back in the bag, and move on.
Yeah, and when you start tracking those specific metrics, a profound psychological shift happens. You stop judging your round solely by the score. Let's say you go out and shoot a frustrating 85. But when you look at your mental scorecard, your commitment score was a 4.8 out of 5 all day, and you successfully used your breathing routine to ensure you never once entered a bogey spiral.
That completely changes the narrative.
It does. From a mental standpoint, that is a wildly successful round of golf. You've won the mental game. And the incredible thing is, as that mental consistency improves, your physical score will inevitably drop.
So what does this all mean for the listener? How does someone actually take all these concepts, the breathing, the reframing, the tracking, and implement them starting tomorrow?
The most effective method is a highly structured framework called the 30-Day Mental Mastery Program. It's a daily, step-by-step plan designed to systematically unwire your perfectionism and train your brain to stay in the present moment.
Okay, what does a typical day in that 30-day program actually look like?
Every single day is dedicated to one specific hyper-focused goal. For example, day 1 might just be about awareness. Your only task for a 15-minute practice session is to strictly observe your negative self-talk without judging it, just noticing how often you call yourself an idiot.
Which is probably a lot for most of us.
Oh, absolutely. Then day 10 might involve 15 minutes of dedicated box breathing to build that vagal tone. Crucially, each day ends with a reflection question. You're systematically building new neural pathways over a month. By the end of the 30 days, your baseline stress response has shifted. Your brain simply no longer panics at the sight of a bogey.
I am just marveling at how comprehensive this entire framework is. It completely shifts the perspective away from the mechanical obsession with the golf swing toward total mental and physiological resilience. It makes you realize that the reason you are slicing the ball out of bounds on the 16th hole probably isn't because your elbow was bent at the wrong angle. It's because your brain is exhausted and you're still subconsciously angry about a three-putt you had on hole number 4.
The physical mechanics matter, of course. You do need a functional swing. But at a certain level, almost everyone on the course has a decent enough swing to play well. The real separation, the gap between playing to your potential or collapsing under pressure, happens entirely between the ears.
We are nearing the end of our deep dive today, so I really want to boil all of this incredible information down. If we look at everything we've discussed, what is the ultimate unifying takeaway from these coaching philosophies?
There is a very clear, defining philosophy that encapsulates everything Dr. Bob Rotella and modern performance psychology try to instill in an athlete. Here it is. Your goal is not to play flawless golf. Your goal is to come back faster and better after every mistake.
I'm going to say that again because it is that important. Your goal is not to play flawless golf. Your goal is to come back faster and better after every mistake. I want to genuinely thank you for acting as our caddy for the mind today.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
We have unpacked some truly game-changing concepts today. We've learned that breaking the bogey spiral isn't about forcefully ignoring bad shots. It's about noticing them, radically accepting them, using physiological tools like the double inhale sigh to hit the brakes on your nervous system, and choosing the process over the perfection of the score. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder, and it's something entirely off the golf course.
I love this.
If the ultimate Tour Pro secret is viewing golf as a game of mistakes rather than a game of perfection, wait, let me rephrase that. If they view it as a game of mistakes, where else in your life are you holding yourself to an impossible standard of perfection? What if you applied that exact 30-second bogey reset routine to your next frustrating day at work or a heated argument with a friend? Notice the anger. Accept the situation. Breathe to reset the nervous system. Reframe the narrative. Refocus on the present. Commit to the next right step. How much faster could you bounce back?